Fellow Ghanaians, good morning. So throughout this weekend and this week, students will be reporting, and in fact, many of them have been reporting to their various senior high schools following their BEC and that torturous placement for many of such students and their parents. And fellow Ghanaians, every year, when the basic education certificate exam results are released and the school placements follow, thousands of Ghanaian children have to endure what is a really torturous process. They sit on edge, holding their breath and praying that fortune and the computerized system will smile on them. It is a national ritual of hope and heartbreak at the same time. Hope that years of effort will earn them a place in one of the so-called Category A senior high schools, and heartbreak when it doesn't. Because in today's Ghana, in the country that we have built, the school that you are placed in after junior high school has become more than a school. It has become a stamp of destiny, a label of worth, and sometimes a passport to opportunity. The categorization of our senior secondary schools, or what is now called senior high schools, into categories A, B, C, and D was never meant to be a social ladder that determines who rises and those who stay behind. It was originally intended to assess performance and infrastructure, to guide resource allocation, and to encourage excellence. Yet, like so many good ideas that we have failed to manage properly, and in fact mismanaged as a people, it has mutated into something poisonous and very deeply unfair. It now mirrors the inequalities of our nation itself, separating privilege from struggle, comfort from hardship, and opportunity from neglect. At the very top of this hierarchy sit the glittering names we've all come to revere: Wesley Girls, Achimota School, Presec Legon, Holy Child, St. Augustine's, Adi Sadel, Infantepim, Opokuware, Prempeh College. Their names carry prestige, history, and power. They are the schools of the elite, the places where Ghana's brightest lights and political heirs often pass through. Their dormitories are refurbished, their science laboratories are functional, and their students have access to computers, and their teachers are the best. They are motivated. They have old student associations with deep pockets, old boys and girls who occupy positions of influence in today's society, in government, in business. They are always ready to lend support when called upon. When you attend one of these schools, doors open before you even knock. Now step down the ladder to the category B, C's, and D's. The Benkum Senior High Schools, that's where I went. Kintampo Senior High School, Tepa SHS, Otibwatin, and countless others that are spread across this country. These are schools filled with equally intelligent, equally ambitious young Ghanaians. But unlike their counterparts in these so-called elite institutions, they are trapped in a cycle of underdevelopment. Their classrooms are overcrowded, their dormitories sometimes unfit for habitation, even for animals. Their laboratories exist only in name, and in many cases, their libraries are empty. Teachers are overburdened, underpaid, and often absent because motivation is super low and supervision is weak. These students are taught to dream big, yet the system clips their very wings before they can even attempt to fly. Fellow Ghanaians, when it comes to this, we have to be honest. The current categorization is not just an education policy. It has become a structure of inequality. A student's future is now decided less by their talent or their effort and more by the accident, the lottery of which school they are placed in. And their placement itself is often the product of inequality from the very beginning. So, fellow Ghanaians, picture this: a child born into a poor household in some rural community up north or down south, whose parents never went beyond basic education, struggling to survive. This child attends a public basic school where teachers are few, classrooms are cracked, roofs are leaking, and sometimes lessons are actually held under trees. There are days when when no teachers show up, and there are weeks when the school goes without textbooks or chalk. A child would have to walk several kilometers to and from school, studies by lantern in the evening because there's no electricity in the community, but has to compete in the same BEC as a child of a privileged person who attended a well-resourced private school. in this city with air-conditioned classrooms, fully stocked libraries, modern laboratories, constant internet, and highly motivated teachers. Then when the results come out, the privileged child who scores aggregate 6 or 8 compared to the rural child that gets 22 or 25, then the system, in its called arithmetic, rewards the privileged child with a place in Achimota, Presec, or Wesley Girls, and the poor child is sentenced into a category D school that looks exactly like the deprived basic school they came from, sometimes worse. How is that fair exactly, fellow Ghanaians? How do we expect the child from deprivation to break free when every rung of the ladder above them is missing? This, fellow Ghanaians, is how inequality reproduces itself. The child born into wealth enjoys good education from kindergarten to senior high school, and then to university, and becomes part of the elite that governs and benefits from the same system. Then the poor child, equally intelligent but structurally handicapped, is trapped in a cycle that makes escape such a difficult thing or almost impossible. That is not meritocracy. That is injustice that we are dressing up as some fairness. We have built an education system that is so unfair that deeply perpetuates inequality under the guise of rewarding excellence. Every year, Category A schools dominate the headlines with their WASSCE results. NSMQ is nigh. You see their victories in these national science and maths quiz and their long list of students entering the top universities in Ghana and abroad. Meanwhile, the B's and C's and D's of this world are left out of the national conversation. We've gotten to a point where they do not even matter, even though their students often display resilience and determination that the privileged will never know. Their triumphs are not celebrated. They are personal and quiet, rarely televised. But the question we must all ask, fellow Ghanaians, is simple. How can there be excellence when there's no equality? Equality in terms of the distribution of resources. How can we judge the performance of a school that has such a functioning laboratory against one that has never seen a test tube? How can we compare students who use digital resources and simulation tools to those who draw computers on chalkboards? These students don't have the same opportunities. The categorization system has become a ceiling, not a springboard. And the government must dismantle this as soon as possible. This architecture of inequality, and they must now rebuild from the ground up. The priority, fellow Ghanaians, I submit this morning, must be equity. Let every senior high school, regardless of their location, be provided with the same quality of infrastructure, teaching materials, and qualified staff. Or at least they must be at arm's length. Let us ensure that students in schools like Benkum Senior High School or Tibuatin have access to the same tools as those in Wesley Girls or in Fansepim. It is not a matter of charity. It is a matter of right that they also get what they deserve. It's a matter of justice. Then we must also change how we define excellence. Once WASSCE and other playing field is leveled, categorization can now be based purely on performance in national exams, not some historical prestige. Excellence should not be fluid. It must be fixed. If a school in Boku or Tepa performs Achimota or Presec in the WASSCE, then they deserve to be higher up in the ranking. This way, the competition becomes meaningful. This way, the reward becomes fair and every school has a reason to strive. The government should go beyond slogans and launch a national school equity project, a deliberate, targeted project that will resource so many of these schools. Targeted investment to uplift the most deprived schools, modern classrooms, equipped laboratories, digital libraries, and everything they need, decent dormitories, clean water, and reliable electricity. There must not be some privilege reserved for the few. They must be the foundation of every Ghanaian child's education. Teacher development must also be equitable. It makes no sense that the best and most experienced teachers all want to teach in Accra and Cape Coast, while rural schools are left with least experienced teachers. There must be real incentives, real ones, for teachers to serve in these deprived schools, not token promises that are never fulfilled. Because if you do that, these teachers will never go down. And then perhaps we also need a major reform when it comes to the placement system itself. Beyond grades, we must introduce equity-based parameters that will ensure that brilliant but needy students who are disadvantaged are not trapped in the same conditions of underdevelopment. That way, we can ensure that they move past the neglect. We can adopt a system that recognizes the challenges, the difficulties that they are stuck with, that they have to study with before they make it to the WASSCE. That is the totality of the context of the achievement. A child who scores 25 from a rural basic school with no textbooks has achieved something worthy of celebrating. And it's extraordinary. The system must recognize that context and reward it. Not simply live in a certain bubble of their own and say that because you had 25 in a school with no teachers, with no classrooms, with nothing, then you must be some poor student. There are glimpses of what is possible when opportunity meets determination. That is how, fellow Ghanaians, we can make some progress and get to a point where we do better. In 2023, Tepa Senior High School, not one of the so-called elite schools, they stunned this country. They did something incredible by winning and getting very close in the National Science and Maths quiz. They won some of their competition. We're all happy. I remember WASSCE. It was such a big celebration at the time. And when they did this, for so many people, it was more than victory. It was a statement that when you equip some of these so-called poor schools, that is where excellence begins. And that performances should have inspired a national rethink that maybe if we resource these schools and we get them to a point where they have all they need, they perhaps will do better. And so, fellow Ghanaians, this morning, we must rethink our obsession with Category A schools. They are misplaced. As a nation, we must quickly move on from this obsession with Category A schools that live on pedigree and not performance. Fellow Ghanaians, that is how we can make some changes. Education is supposed to be a great equalizer. The instrument through which we do that must be a proper and fairer assessment for everybody. If we continue to be stuck in this same old system where certain categories of schools get all the support, but those down the line that don't get anything, we are not going to be where we want to be. So, fellow Ghanaians, this morning must be an awakening as students continue and resume first years, some of them in the Category A schools and some of them in the B's and C's and D's. We haven't created a level playing field for them. We have left them to their own devices. So many of them, like me, who went to Category B, C, D's, would have to find our own way up the ladder. But we will strive always, but the system must be equitable. Good morning, fellow Ghanaians.